All right, we're back live from New York with you guys tonight. We're up here going to the Ondo Summit tomorrow, so we'll be there with all the big boys. I don't know if you guys saw the list or not, but it is a stellar list of people that will be here in New York tomorrow, talking and discussing tokenization of financial products. Let me see if I can find the full list here. I posted over there on my Twitter. We have, let me get to it here. Oh yes, Citi, Visa, BNY, Swift, DRW, eToro, DTCC, Galaxy, Fidelity, PayPal, Citadel, VanEck, Invesco, NASDAQ, Pantera, Moody's, Coinbase, Vanguard, Euroclear, BX Digital, Bloomberg, BlackRock, StockTwits, MasterCard, CME Group, JP Morgan, WisdomTree, FTSE Russell, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Franklin Templeton, Standard Chartered, McKinsey, Wellington Management, London Stock Exchange Group, and State Street. All here tomorrow, running through things to do with tokenization of real world assets and financial products. When I was at Swell here in New York last year, about 2 months ago, is that right? Yeah, first week of November, so it's 3 months ago. They had a lot of the same people up on their stage talking about a lot of this and the timelines that they had for tokenization of the stock market, the FX market, the commodities market, derivatives, and the like. And many of them gave timelines of 2026 being kind of laying the groundwork for all of that, 2027, 2028 being full implementation and tokenization of these financial markets. NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, and many others have said that 2026 will be the year that they tokenize the stock market or their exchange. There are 16 or 17 different exchanges that trade stocks. Most people know NASDAQ and know NYSE, or the New York Stock Exchange, as the main two, because that is where the majority of stocks get listed. And they also get the majority of the ETFs too. So that's why most people know those. But there are lots of brokers that are attached to them. And it's a bit more complex than just click and buy. Like most people think these days. You have your eToro account, or you've got your E-Trade account or your Robinhood account. And you think when you buy that stock, you bought it. Well, and that's kind of true. But if you scratch a few layers deeper, there's some reconciliation that has to happen between the clearing houses and the brokers for whatever exchange this is. We had shout out to Max Kahn. He was on FinTech TV today, which is on the stock floor here in New York, alongside Ondo and a few of the other people that were up here filming with them today. People used to trade there. People used to do electronic trading from there to the data centers across the river over there in New Jersey, which is where all of them still are. I think with satellites, things are going to be a bit different, especially once it's on blockchain and you have a real-time distributed ledger. A lot of the advantages that people have been leveraging for the past, call it 30, 40 years with those connections to be able to beat people and trade faster than them. And that's why, like, if you're a retail trader, like, good luck. They're going to eat your lunch. They can literally see your trade coming before it gets there and front run you on the trade because of how much faster their stuff is than yours. So, again, 96% of traders are losers. Most people would do much better to just be an investor, hold over the long term, and get the appreciation as markets continue to trend up and to the right with inflation over, the last 40, 50 years. That's been a really good play. Now, things are going to change here, I think, in 2026, when we do have, some of these currencies are going to get backed by physical assets. You saw Trump announce today $12 trillion worth of mineral rights that they are aggregating for the U.S. to be able to compete with China and other large nations globally. That's a big deal. We need these raw resources and these commodities to be able to back our currency and compete on a level playing field without the dollar supremacy being, you know, um, I don't even know if you want to call it a dictatorship or a monarchy or what you want to call it. But we have been in, the driver's seat for the past 50 plus years after Nixon took us off the gold standard, and really even longer than that since Bretton Woods in 1944. But again, all of that's changing this year. They are going to have the ball drop here in New York on July 4th for the 250th anniversary of the United States on July 4th. 2026. They're going to use the same 2026 that had the 589 bulbs in it on that day, which will be pretty cool. And again, a lot of things centered here in New York. I do think that Texas, Dallas, where I'm based, is going to become a hub for finance with the Texas Stock Exchange and many other things moving there. But that is going to take time. A lot of stuff coming out with the Epstein files. I don't know if you guys have seen all of that. I don't know how much I can or can't say on here before I get down regulated. Go check it out. There's a lot of things, so if you want to go back and look, I had a tweet on February 26th, a year ago, where I talked about, wouldn't it be interesting if Epstein was tied to Bitcoin in some way? I wonder what that would do to the asset. Well, here we are, and it's falling quickly. You've got macroeconomic events playing out that we've been talking about for a long time over there in the Middle East with oil and Iran and Israel and the U.S. A lot of our military over there, praying for them right now. Hopefully that doesn't lead to an escalation of things, but I do think that they will shut down the Strait of Hormuz at some point, which is going to cause oil to spike and the full domino theory to play out. And we know that the first place that we're going to implement distributed ledger technology is on the back end of the stock market, because that's where Monica Long was interviewing president of NASDAQ, and that's what she said. Those aren't my words, but that is something that I've said for a long time. They moved to T+1 on May 28th in 2024. I remember the day I watched Brad Garlinghouse speak at Consensus when that happened, and it was the first time that he had ever talked about XRP being on their balance sheet in evaluation for the company. And then, we've been sitting there at T+1 till now. They can move to T+0 the same way, when they passed that, they said that they could move to T+0 if there was enough liquidity in a digital asset to be able to provide instant settlement. And we know, Project Ion was finalized between the DTCC and R3 back in 2022, August of 2022. And its primary settlement mechanism is, you guessed it, XRP. So that's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and education purposes. You should always speak with a financial professional, somebody that's licensed to give you financial advice before making any financial decisions. Same thing goes for taxes. Same thing goes for legal. Find you an attorney, find you a CPA. I am not any of those things. I'm just some guy on the internet. And I like to get on here and chop it up with you guys, answer good questions. And again, all of the opinions that I voice are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners, its subsidiary, which is an SEC registered RIA or an IA, investment advisor. RIAs are who they employ. We have 27 advisors over there at Digital Wealth Partners. This is a good time for me to mention this. We have moved to, we've worked with Anchorage over the past more than a year of working with them, and we're finally able to take individuals. If anybody would like to work with Digital Wealth Partners, you have more than 50,000 XRP or at least $500,000 in total portfolio value, you can absolutely onboard as an individual with Digital Wealth Partners. Obviously, we recommend that you get an LLC or a trust, structure it in some way to be able to protect your assets, get creditor protection, anonymity, all the stuff that we've talked about ad nauseum on here. But I know that there are people that may not have, the funds to be able to go ahead and set that up now. If they've only got 50,000 XRP, only 50,000 XRP, that's a lot of XRP for a lot of people. But that is our minimum. And so if you are an individual and you do want your assets in real institutional custody over there at Anchorage, They are a qualified custodian here in the U.S. The account is insured up to $100 million. It's segregated, bankruptcy remote, and they use HSMs, which is what's required for FIPS compliance here in the U.S. to be a qualified custodian. Anyway, all those things, you'll be able to add your spouse to the account, be able to add your kiddos to the account as beneficiaries, and they don't have to know anything about crypto. They will be entitled to those assets if, God forbid, something happens to you. So if any of that sounds cool to you, you want to have a conversation, you want to understand more, you can go over there to digitalwealthpartners.net, use the contact us form, and if you qualify, you actually get a free consult. So there's a couple questions that they ask you, and if you qualify, they'll give you a free consult, free financial advice over there. Again, we got 27 total advisors, and they're chomping at the bit to help you guys and make sure you're making the best decisions for your digital assets and your family. Why would I give custody to someone? Well, Mystery Inc. I'll give you an example. We worked with one family. There was a individual that bought a lot of Bitcoin back in 2011. And it was on a hard drive. And he left it to his family in the will. Well, they didn't know how to use crypto. They couldn't find the keys. It's worth $500 million. And they couldn't even get to it. But it was left to them in the will. And they had to end up writing that off because they couldn't access it. So stuff like that, right? Like your spouse may understand crypto, which is great. If you got kids, maybe one of your children's older and they can, make sure that you show them how to get to the wallet. But then there's some risk associated with that, right? Like the whole reason people use a stock account and not holding these stock certificates in their safe anymore is you get institutional custody. You have institutional partners. This is the same thing for your crypto. These are an FBO account for the benefit of, and they are your assets. You're in control. You tell us what to do with them. They're just held at the same place as BlackRock is holding their assets. So if you want the same security as BlackRock and you want, real advisors that are going to give you good financial advice when it comes to digital assets, Digital Wealth Partners is the only place in the entire world, I like to say, because it's true, that will provide you this advice. We work with international clients all the time. And again, if you don't have a corporation, you're international, you're an individual and you have more than 50,000 XRP, we would love to work with you. It says, do you have a broker's license? We're not a broker dealer because we don't trade securities. Most of our advisors are licensed with a Series 65. Some of them do have a 7. We have a 7, a 24, 66, 63, 3. And again, most of them have a 65, and many of them have their insurance license also. And they can, again, full capability to provide you financial advice. And again, that's not me. So go on over there, check it out. We would love to work with you, and we'll go ahead and jump into the questions tonight. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me and run down all the fantastic questions that you guys have. Fast Eddie says, Jake, thanks for all that you do. With Evernorth owning 700 million XRP and going to close XRPN in first quarter, XRPN is about $10.20 now. Should we buy before they close the deal? Thanks again. I can't can't give you financial advice. But when it comes to Evernorth, I think they're going to be extremely successful at providing a MNAV that is over 1. So what is MNAV? It's a multiple of NAV, MNAV. Net asset value is NAV. So like a ETF would trade 1-to-1 with the NAV. So, however many shares, or however many XRP are issued per share, as the, price of XRP goes up, the share prices go up in correlation. When you have a DAT like Evernorth, which is a digital asset treasury company, then you can do some interesting things. You can issue debt, you can do convertible notes, you can borrow money to buy the asset and then put it to work in ways that are a little bit more unique than what's available on chain. So like the Solana and the ETF, ETFs, they can stake those. Bitcoin and XRP don't have a native staking mechanism. So they're really limited in what they can do to be able to pay a dividend. There is an ETF that does pay a dividend, a 3% dividend on XRP. So not quite sure how they're doing that. I need to better understand that, but that is live. I do think that Evernorth will pay a dividend of some kind, and I think the share price will likely trade above MNAV. So if you were invested in Evernorth, it would be like a leveraged bet on XRP. If they're trading at 1.2 to 1.5 times the net asset value, that's the type of return you'd be seeing as XRP were to move up in the near future, I think. So is it a good buy right now? That's up to you. Again, it kind of depends on your risk tolerance. I've talked about this before. If you have, a low risk tolerance, you probably just want to stick with the ETF. You probably don't do a leveraged ETF or a DAT. If you have a bit higher risk tolerance, because it can also trade below NAV. Like there's a lot of DATs right now that are underperforming and not doing well because the market's down. So if, you can have like exponential losses or exponential gains, just depends on, what the market's doing. So it's a leverage play. If you have a higher risk tolerance and you can stomach that in your portfolio, then it might make sense to make an allocation to a DAT or a leveraged ETF. The leveraged ETFs tend to be for like 2 times leveraged or 3 times leveraged XRP ETFs. They tend to be more for trading, right? So if you're holding it, you actually end up performing worse than the asset over the duration. But if you are trading it, if it's inside of an IRA or a 401k, which are tax deferred or tax free, that's a way that you could play those. Again, I would work with a financial advisor. I would work with somebody that's sophisticated in order to be able to trade that effectively and be able to get the most out of it. Again, most traders, 96% of traders, lose money. So I'd say for most people, if you're looking for a set it and forget it type thing, probably the ETF. And if you're looking for, kind of a levered play and you do think that Evernorth is going to be successful, which I do, then it might make sense to make an allocation there. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, I do think that they're going to go live with that SPAC at some point here in Q1. And maybe, just maybe, they're waiting till XRP pumps before they do it. We'll have to see. Young Quavo says, we trust DWP or XRP with a Roths. Is that DWP? Awesome. Glad to be working with you. What's the worst case scenario of having everything in this one basket if something goes wrong? And what could go wrong? Would you change anything? So we're looking to be able to diversify across multiple custodians. Anchorage is awesome. Again, same place that BlackRock holds their digital assets. But there are some other custodians that are coming onto the scene here in 2026 that we're in conversations with to be able to diversify across multiple custodians, just like you're talking about. We encourage people to hold, a portion of their assets with us, maybe a portion on their cold wallet, maybe a portion on an exchange or something. It's good to have some diversification where you're holding the assets. And again, I have them all there. I'm not worried about it because they do have the most security of anywhere, literally. That's why BlackRock is working with them. And that's why they're able to garner the level of insurance that they are. For some people, they just, want to be able to mitigate or structure things in a way that mitigates risk a little bit more. So that's why we're working to implement multiple custodians. Worst case scenario, I'll give it to you. They go bankrupt. Okay. They have a really strong balance sheet. They have like $700 million on their balance sheet right now. I do think that Anchorage is probably going to go public in the not too distant future. Just, hearsay around. I could be off with that. We'll have to find out. But with all that being said, let's say they go bankrupt. Okay. They are not relief estate like BNY Mellon. They are bankruptcy remote though. So the assets are segregated from their exchange business. Those assets are always yours. They will have to go through the bankruptcy process, but your assets sit there in kind and you will get access to them post bankruptcy. And that's, again, I think we can maybe get I don't know if there's anybody else besides BNY Mellon, but that sounds like a good thing. Another trust bank steps in immediately, takes over. You never skip a beat with that if something were to happen. But I don't think BNY Mellon's going anywhere or anybody else that's relief estate because BNY Mellon has like 50 or 60 trillion dollars under custody. Kind of a big deal. They will be here tomorrow. So all that being said, that's like worst case scenario. I look at it like a three-legged stool. Okay. Um, so, there's us at DWP, and there's Anchorage. Anchorage provides the infrastructure and the custody solution. We provide advisory and the other side of the multi-sig. And then, you own the assets and you're the other signer on the account. Any one of those legs can kind of get kicked out and it's still standing. So, Anchorage goes bankrupt. Cool. We go through the bankruptcy process. Your assets are still there. We're still your advisor. No problems. We go out of business. Something happens to DWP. That's fine. You can, have your RIA or another RIA set up with Anchorage. You move your account over to them. They manage it for you. God forbid something happens to you. We have beneficiaries on the accounts to make sure that there's continuity and management of the assets, and your family gets them, or whoever you designate. So again, there's contingency planning, and again, another trust bank would step in on the other side of Anchorage, having problems to be able to manage stuff. So, that's why this is so effective. And again, that's the reason BlackRock moved their assets there. They're getting the best of the best. The security behind this, we're actually going to have either Ben Hearn or Joe Medioli in the mastermind in the not too distant future to talk about the security mechanism on the backside of this. It's a derivative of copper. Again, they hold the sharded keys across HSMs. These sharded keys are also encrypted. And they never come quite back together when you issue a transaction. They also whitelist wallets. So the only place anybody can send it, even if they do hack it, guess what? Back to your cold wallet. So again, like all of these things, they've done a fantastic job of putting this together, and they are the most seasoned OCC, federally chartered bank for crypto. They got their license in Trump's first term, and they've been around longer than any of the other ones. You've got Ripple, which I think got full clarity the other day to operate as a trust bank here in the U.S. and OCC oversight. I know that 5 licenses were issued preliminary. Them, Circle, Paxos, BitGo, and Fidelity were the 5 that had the preliminary OCC charter for the crypto side of their business. So, and again, we're talking to a few of those also. And a good question, and again, our advisors will be able to answer all this stuff too, but people want to know. Ethan says, Evernorth, Texas Exchange, what we don't. There's a lot of stuff that I know. Again, I've been really blessed to be in cool rooms like the one I'm going to be in tomorrow, right? To have the privilege of being around all these people while all this stuff is happening, it's surreal for me. Like, I don't view myself as anybody special or any people come up to me and they're excited to meet me, which is fantastic. I felt the same way about other YouTubers years ago. You feel like somebody, right? You listen to them all the time, and you run up and you're like there was a guy in the airport the other day, Scott. He's like, Jake. He runs and tracks me down, and I'm like, hey, how's it going, man? I don't know who Scott is, but I got to know who Scott was, which was really cool. Him and his wife, hold a decent amount of XRP. They're doing well. And he just happened to be, leaving at the same time in the airport as me. So every once in a while, somebody notices me out in public, and I appreciate that. But again, I don't think I'm anybody special. Just a regular dude, put my pants on, same way as you guys. And again, I'm just really privileged and blessed to be in rooms with really high level people that are, working on all this stuff. And, God's given me the wisdom to be able to, comb through all the stuff out there and understand enough of this stuff to be able to have a productive conversation and provide value to them in some capacity. Because a lot of these people come from TradFi. I named off a ton of names from TradFi, and they're a couple years behind. Like, they understand this stuff, they're sharp, but somebody that is like DeFi native or crypto native that's been through NFTs and airdrops and staking and yield farming and all the other stuff that exists in this space with liquidity pools, all the amendments on the XRPL. Speaking of which, big news on that. We got 2 days until permission domains go live on the XRPL. And you've also got 65 and 60 pseudo accounts and borrow lend are currently being voted on. Not a whole lot of votes on those yet, but those are some big deals here for the XRPL in 2025, along with the permission DEX. So I'm hopeful that we'll get permission DEX here soon. I do think that permission domains is going to allow people to be able to start sending payments over the mainnet, and that may be what we're waiting on here to go live before they, push the price to where it needs to be. Big day on the ETFs. Also, I think we had another 30 or 40 million bought up off the market today. There's very little left on the OTC desk in the dark pools. Ripple, they had the escrow release. They re-escrowed 700 million, and they kept 300 of that. And there's about 500 million XRP sitting in one of their wallets. They haven't moved it off or sold it anywhere. So maybe they're holding it. If they're holding it as their reserve or what they're doing, that's less that's on the market. And again, supply shock, I do think, is inbound in the not too distant future. Maybe, I'm just going to throw this out here. I have no idea if it's true or not. It would be really cool if BlackRock were to announce their XRP ETF tomorrow at the Ondo Summit. We'll see. I doubt that's going to happen, honestly, but it would be really cool to be here when that happens, since I've been talking about it for so long. We got Rick Mr. Johnson. He says, Mr. Muscles, 1, how do you see the predictive crypto volatility from the reverse carry trade on crypto playing out? 2, break down the January 31st crash and what you can see in the next 6 months ahead. Take us down those rabbit holes. Honestly, I don't know. It's hard to predict one way or the other. I just know what the macroeconomics are going to be, right? So those things play out. I do think that there's absolutely going to be volatility. Could XRP get sent lower? Sure. Phoenix is supposed to rise from the ashes, right? Like, am I going to play the game trying to catch that falling knife? Absolutely not. Just dollar cost average when I can. The last couple of days have been some really good days to dollar cost average down if you bought over the last year. So again, can't give you financial advice, can't tell you to buy. But if you were going to make an allocation, this seems like a decent spot to do it just based on the historical price over the last year. I don't know that we're going to see 20, 30, 40, 50, $1 in that range. We've already seen a big wick down, and we've wicked below what we did on 1010. So I think the bottom may be in for XRP. The chart that I like to watch, I look old. Thank you, Sherry. 34. Appreciate the confidence. The chart that I like to look at is Bitcoin versus XRP. And if you go look at that chart, it's right back at the level where we've had some strong reactions before. And the big candle on the 1010 did wick all the way back down and clear clear any stuff to the upside that it missed out on. Again, not a TA guy, not a chart person, but I do think there's some legitimacy to all that. I think Blockchain Backer does a really good job. Shout out to him. He's called this play for play up to this point. I just don't think he sees the black swan that's imminently approaching. And there's a couple things on that. Okay. So put my, I don't have my tinfoil hat, but I'm gonna put it on real quick. Again, with the oil, I think that is absolutely likely to play out. It seems very likely at this point with the conflict over there in the Middle East between Iran and the US and Israel. The other thing that's the wild card, I mentioned this, I guess it was 2 days ago. Well, actually, it was 24 hours ago. There's some pretty significant solar activity going on right now, which is unusual. They had the largest recorded solar flare that I've ever seen in my entire life. It was an X8.3, which is, I don't know about the scale. Again, I don't even know what you call somebody that studies the sun, but I'm not that type of person. But I follow a couple of them, and they were pointing out, how much solar activity is coming off this one spot on the sun. And there has been a few things that have been thrown at the earth. So best case scenario, we get an awesome aurora all the way into the south when that hits us. Worst case scenario, we have another Carrington event that ends up playing out. So, wild card coming out of left field. Want to make sure, and people have asked me about like Faraday bag and their cold wallet and all this stuff. I'm not worried about that. Look, all you got to do is have your keys. If you've got your seed phrases, you can reconstitute your wallet, even if it gets fried somehow. I don't think there's going to be an EMP. I don't think there's, but it could knock out satellites and have some. Here, I'm going to take the bigger tinfoil hat and put it on real quick. Epstein documents have come out, and there's going to be more that come out. The Clintons agreed today that they are going to, go to trial and like testify on all this stuff. We've seen some things that have happened before with them where like whole buildings blow up and servers that were in those buildings are gone, can't get to the information. I don't know if they could use a solar flare as an excuse to like shut stuff down or do something crazy. I know how crazy that sounds, but like I don't put that stuff past those type of people. And all of that coming out and being publicly available, I don't know, man. I'm just throwing it out there. So we'll have to see what plays out over this week here. Again, trying to stay on top of that and keep you guys updated. My wife, my wonderful wife, has reminded me of the super chats that I have over here in my Gmail. And so we're going to get to these real quick. Truth of Heart says, hi again. Is there a possibility XRP could be held at a lesser price for retail and appreciate only for banks and corporates? Nope. XRP is worth XRP. Whatever the price is on the mainnet is what it's worth. You can't have a different side chain or anything like that. I literally asked David Schwartz that specifically in 2024 when the side chain started coming out. I was like, can XRP be a different price on one of these chains? And he said, no, people would arbitrage it all the way back to where it was break even. So there is no separate price for the institutions versus retail. And again, they don't care if you get rich. Shout out to KT Baby for that one. And then the Spartan says, if there's no Clarity Act, why would that not be better for XRP since they already have it? And that's also what happened with Iran to make sure has to have an impact on oil. Thanks for all that you do. Yeah, I'm with you. Like I've been saying that for a while, that XRP has a unique position here, while, none of these other assets have clarity. Shout out to Joe for his birthday. Sent him an email earlier today. But just reminding him here if he's watching, appreciate you. And then me bogus is who sent this one. They say, Big Jake, please clarify DWP yield program using simple math. Example, 10,000 XRP at $100 is $1 million. At 5% is 50K. Monthly payments breaks down to $4,000, $166. Also, if price were to increase to 200, 1K, etc., monthly pay goes up automatically. I mean, you crushed it, my dude. It won't be 5%, the product that we're going to bring to market. I would love it to be. We're going back and forth on some ways we can get it there while still mitigating risk and keeping it, quote unquote guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. There's always some level of risk, but this will be yield on your XRP. It'll be monthly payouts, somewhere between 3 and 4% is where we're going to be coming to market with that. And you guys will hear more on that as soon as I can say more on that. But yeah, to your point, the way that you broke it down, let's, we'll do some math here. I have my other phone over here on TikTok tonight so I can get to my calculator and not sound wrong on the math like I normally am. All right. So our minimum is 50,000 XRP. Okay. We'll just say you meet the minimum if you work with Digital Wealth Partners, because this product is going to be available for everybody. Not going to matter if you're accredited or not. Right now, we only have products for accredited clients. This product will be available for everybody. So we'll say you got the minimum, 50,000 XRP. XRP is at $100, so we got $5 million. Okay, $5 million times, we're going to be conservative. We're going to say 3%. That's $150,000 a year. Would be, if XRP is $100 and you got 50,000 XRP with us, $5 million, 3% gives you, 150 grand. We're going to divide that by 12. So that's going to be $12,500 a month. It's pretty good, and obviously you're still going to owe taxes on that. You're going to be in a reasonable tax threshold. You're probably going to be 24, 28%, depending on you and your spouse, and if you have other active income from your W-2. But you will be able to mitigate that if you have it inside of an LLC. You'll be able to spend that money on trips and things for crypto conferences and like education, the mastermind. You can write that off, all those things, right? So that's kind of the math and how it breaks down. And to your point, as it continues to go up in value, your payouts continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's the whole point, right? Like I want to make sure that we have all the solutions to market to be able to generate yield on your XRP so that people can live off of that, and the ability to borrow against it at a high stable value. We already have the ability to borrow against it. We've had a lot of margin calls in the last couple of days. I'm happy to report that the majority of people have been able to shore those up with no issues. Some of them are still waiting for the market to rebound. That's the benefit of working with, the counterparties that we have versus a smart contract. If you were to stake your stuff in Aave or Compound and we had a wick to the downside and you got margin called and you didn't top it up within, whatever period, or you get a capital call, they just take your stuff. There is no leniency. There is no, give me a couple days to be able to work this out. Happens on a weekend like this just happened. It's gone. So again, we want, good counterparties to work with on that. Arch Lending's been fantastic. If you're part of the mastermind, you can get access to that. Same thing over at DWP. They're a great partner. We have some other ones also, and then we have a prime broker that we'll probably be working with in the near future to be able to get you guys lines of credit that way. So, and there's lots of prime brokers out there, just so you know. Anyway, so coming down to it, I want to make sure that everybody has all these resources before price appreciation so that post price appreciation, you don't have to sell your XRP if you don't want to, right? If you knew that you're going to be able to get monthly income, maybe you got to hang out at your job for another 30 days. Okay. That's a lot better than, 3 to 6 months to be able to, sell some and acquire a real estate property and be able to start generating cash flow off of that. You have an asset that's going to be able to cash flow for you when we get this product to market. So really excited about that. And it will be the first of its kind here in the US. It'll be the only regulated way to be able to generate yield on your XRP. There are some other people like Doppler and Midas and a few others that are doing this out there. But if you're in the US and you're participating, you're doing it illegally. Those are securities offerings. And they have told me that. They know that. That's why they've geofenced the US. And you should not be using a VPN to participate in that. And again, I can't tell you what to do. Go talk to a financial advisor. They can work that out with you. And that's why this product is so important for us to get to market. Hi, Mr. Legend. Thank you for the kind words. They say, tuning in from a 3 a.m. night shift. Thanks for all the recent videos and tweets and the info. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you and the kind words. Working that night shift, my man. Keep up the good work. We got 5,896 people watching. 589, baby. We got Rocket 99 XRP. It says, bro, you seem less excited than you were last year. Stupid lawyers. We're feeling it, man. We're hopium addicts. You still hella bush. Horny for Hormozy. Oh, wow. That's aggressive. Hormozy's kind of a stud. So I get it. Look, I am just as bullish as I was last year. Everything's still on the table, and even more so than it was. Again, would be really cool if BlackRock decided to drop the ETF tomorrow while I was here. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they did, you can bet your biscuits we're in for a heck of a ride. And again, we're going to need the oil spike. So people are always asking me, they're like, well, what if this, happens separate of this? And what if this happens separate of this? Or what if this doesn't happen? Look, I've given you guys the playbook. Like, I don't know how much more explicit I can be than that on this deal. You have to have all of this demand hit XRP at the same time. And there has to be very low supply. Okay, that's the only way that XRP is ever going to get to 3 and 4 digits, period. It's not going to be a slow climb. It's not going to be this or that, like this, then that, then this and this. And like, it's not going to be retail. If retail was going to do it, we already would have done it. So all that being said, like, this is the way that this is going to get orchestrated for the supply shock, and everybody's going to pile in at one time. And that's the way they're going to push the price to the level they need it to be. And then it's going to be coordinated with these amendments going live so that they can start using the network and hold price stability at a high level. It's not going to be coming back down. I know a lot of people are anticipating, this whipsaw situation where you sell high and buy back lower. I'm not playing that game. Could it come back down some? Sure. Person says infinite supply. Justin, that is incorrect, sir. There's 100 billion XRP, and the origin account is black hold. They cannot issue or mint more. They've locked up 50 billion. That's why the original price run happened in 2017 to 2018. And if Ripple holds the escrow and doesn't put it onto the market, that's a really good way to orchestrate another supply shock here to be able to drive the price higher. So nobody can mint more XRP. But I don't know. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, a bunch of FUD that people have put out for years, a lot of Bitcoin maxis. And again, pretty interesting with the Epstein connections to Bitcoin at this point. Dr. Deltoids, I'll take that. Appreciate that. He says, Captain Sailor's white dress uniform is showing lots of red dots for 1,000 cuts of BT slides. Keep him away from the windows. I do think that Michael Saylor probably will get liquidated on this deal, which sucks. But I also think he's supposed to be the fall guy. He was the fall guy in 2001. This is just his role, right? Oh, Gare Bear played his role at the SEC and MIT and all the stuff there. All these people, are making really good money to do what they're supposed to be doing. And at some point, there's going to be a margin call for them, especially if we continue lower here. Like if we see, a $60,000 Bitcoin in the near future, Sailor's going to have to start selling in order to be able to meet the interest that's due. Like they're going to have to start selling off Bitcoin. And when that happens, they have a lot of Bitcoin, like a lot of Bitcoin. I think they have over 1 million Bitcoin. And if they have to liquidate large portions onto the market, that's even more downward pressure. It becomes a spiral because they got to liquidate more to be able to get more money, to be able to cover the losses. Same thing with the other DATs and everything else that's going on. Tom Lee thinks he thinks this is the bottom of the market. I don't think it's the bottom of the market for Bitcoin and ETH. I think it's the bottom of the market for XRP and the utility-based tokens. Could it go a little bit lower? Sure. But I do think that we're going to see some significant demand come in here with, the reverse carry trade and everything I've been talking about. So market dynamics are going to shift substantially if Bitcoin's no longer the number one asset out there. Do things follow XRP? Do they still follow Bitcoin? At a $20,000 Bitcoin, I'm probably going to buy some. I do think that we could get that low for Bitcoin. So, all right. We got OWJ. They say, Al says, main thing for price rise equals no sellers. Well, so that's part of this, right? Because the XRP community believes in these high prices, whether it's through riddles or people like myself explaining to you how it could happen or any of that stuff, You holding your XRP, believing in these high prices, does absolutely help it get there. If you hodl and you're not selling at 5, 10, 20, 25, 30 bucks, and you're holding for higher prices, there's scarcity on the market. And I'm not telling you what to do. Okay. You made a good point. So I'm pointing it out. I think everybody, you never go broke taking profits. I've said that plenty of times. Just understand the tax implications that you're saddling yourself with. Make sure you're cutting check to Uncle Sam and the IRS, which I think is a scam too. Okay. Like I'm like anybody else. I just don't want to go to jail. Okay. And they give you all of these wonderful ways to be able to offset your taxes if you work with a good CPA. So I just play by the rules and do it that way. Okay. There's a lot of people that don't play by the rules or think they can skirt them or get around that have gone to prison. If, this is, I didn't even think about this, but we are doing the tax stuff now. I'd forgotten about it. But if you want to work with our tax guy, we do have that over there at digitalfamilyoffice.io. There's a tax page. It's like $500 for the standard, filing. Hopefully they get your money back and they cover all of that for you. But it is $500 up front. We are not tax preparers. We don't prepare the taxes. We have a trusted partner that we have an affiliate relationship with. It's all disclosed. So you know what's going on. If you want to use us, awesome. Don't want to use us, also awesome. But make sure you do have somebody preparing your taxes and helping you on that stuff. A little late now to be proactive. What I have seen a lot of people do is file an extension. And depending on how much you have for taxes, you can fund back 1 year. You can do, I think you might even be able to do a SEP IRA the next year. I have to look at that. But I know you can do a Roth. You can fund your Roth for last year and this year. You can do a self-directed 401k for last year and this year. And you can put a lot of that money away in a tax-advantaged account to be able to offset some of the taxes if you want to file the extension and make some more money this year so that you have the money to fund it to be able to do that. So, just things to think about. Again, there's other stuff that you can do if you have a liquidity event. Let's say people have a liquidity event here in February. Okay. If you have an LLC, once every 10 years, you can change the year-end date on your LLC. So if you wanted to move that year-end date to, call it January 31st, which is a weird year-end date, but you could do it. And then you would get the full year here to be able to offset those tax implications with buys and whatever else you wanted to do with the money. Another really cool creative way to be able to offset some of your taxes is called the Augusta rule. So let's say you do, come in, you hit it big in crypto and you buy yourself a schwanky house. You can rent the home back to your business up to 14 times a year at the same rate as an Airbnb or another equivalent in your area. So if you had a bowling alley and a bunch of crazy stuff at your house and you put on some stuff for, you need employees and you need like real reasons or business partners or people you're entertaining to do this stuff. But you can make sure you pay yourself on that from your business bank account to your personal bank account, and you have receipts for all this stuff. It's not like it's just a fly by the seat of your pants and think about it later type thing. It does need to be documented, but you can write off a lot of money doing it that way if you do have something that you could charge, significant amounts of money for. So enough with the tax stuff. Again, if you want to work with us on that, happy to do it. You just go over there to digitalfamilyoffice.io and there's a tax page, again, $500, and they'll help you get started. If you need a more complex stuff or more complex filing, it's an additional $200 per hour for the CPA. Most people have pretty simple W-2 and crypto investments in an LLC, and they're not, maybe they tally up their transactions using Coinly or something. It's not overly complicated, but if you want it done right and you want somebody to make sure you're going to get as much back as you can, we have good people that we work with. We got Kuupiliga. Kuupiliga? Butchered that. Fellow Jake. Do banks not mind buying XRP at high prices? Why? Well, they're going to be able to write it off. They're holding it on their balance sheet as a asset to be able to pay gas fees, which is part of a network. It's software. So even if it is a high price and they're buying it there, they would be able to write that off as under Section 179 of the tax code as infrastructure or software that they are using to be able to transact business. So they don't care. A lot of them already, the majority of them already have a pre-negotiated contract with Ripple. There's over 1,700 NDAs with Ripple for pre-negotiated contracts, in my personal opinion. And that allows the majority of these financial institutions to already have an allocation, and they can execute that pre-negotiated option on XRP, and be able to get $1 billion, $500 million, 200 million, whatever it was that they were allocated later on after price appreciates. My wonderful wife's not here with the tea tonight, but I am drinking tea instead of other stuff tonight. Let's see here. Faithful 10 says, Jake, did you have inside baseball on Epstein BTC connection? Is this common knowledge by those in the know? Thanks for your time. Again, like I've never been told any of this stuff that I come on here and talk about explicitly from anybody. Okay. There are just things that people say and I go dig, or I will say something and see what their visceral reaction is. And then I make my own conclusions from there. Right. And I don't ever want it to be like, when's XRP going to move? Like I don't say that stuff. I don't even, most of the time I don't talk about price. Most of the time I don't talk about a specific price. Sometimes I'll say, when XRP is a high price and it's a tier 1 asset, and I see their like faces. Anyway, like it's stuff like that. There's been things and hints that people have dropped. And I try to pick up the breadcrumbs or the gold nuggets that are shared. And then I take that back and do some work in the lab to figure out what that means. And so you go back to my tweet. Like I wasn't sure, but based on a lot of the conversations that I had had and some of the stuff that I had seen, I felt like there might be a there. And I wanted to publicly document that, right? And if I'm wrong, you guys know, I will come on here and say I'm wrong. There's been lots of stuff that I've been wrong about here recently. There's been a lot of stuff that I've been right about. So I'm batting about 700. There's going to be, 3 out of the 10 things that I say on here are probably wrong. Okay. That's our track record right now. And I'm cool with that. Like, I think that's a pretty good average. If you were batting 700, pro baseball, you're doing pretty good in the Hall of Fame for sure. All right. Dylan, he says, hey, Jake, I have a fancy car already picked out. So are we talking weeks, months, or 2027 slow climb up or light switch? I think it'll be a light switch moment. I do think it's going to be, strike a match, burn, jump type thing when it happens. Like I said, with Evernorth going live here in Q1 and a lot of the DeFi products coming to the XRPL here probably by the end of Q1, maybe a little bit after that, it feels like things could move. And again, like they could move at any time. All of the stuff that I talked about at the end of last year is still in play here. It's not like it's changed at all. So, and all it requires is oil. Oil spikes and off we go. Solar flare, off we go, maybe. I don't know. Just have to see, where things are. But this seems like a good year. I won't say who I was talking to the other day. Somebody you guys would know. And he was very bullish on XRP in 2026. We got Maniac. They say, Jake the legend. What's up, my dude? Can you shoot out my best XRP friend? Shout out my best XRP friends, Harry and Luke. Shout out to Harry and Luke. Appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all the support. After price appreciation, we are off to Ross Bay. Can't wait. Awesome, dude. That sounds like a heck of a time. I hope you all have a fantastic trip, and you guys get to relish in all of the, enjoyment of the success that you're going to have on the other side of price appreciation. I don't mind doing that stuff. Same thing. Joe, I don't know if it was his daughter or his son that emailed us and was like, "Hey, can you, message my dad?" Again, just a regular dude. I don't think I'm anything special, but I'm happy to, if people get a kick out of that and they think that's cool, I'm happy to wish people a happy birthday. It was his son. Yeah. So anyway, shout out to Joe. Again, happy birthday. We got Go with the Flow 33. They say, "Hey, Jake, why are you so sure that when the reverse carry trade happens, they will use XRP instantly and not QE and money printing first?" Well, because we will go into hyperinflation and we're screwed if they do that. And XRP later to save the system when that would not work. They've already done that. I don't know where you've been living, but everything around here where I live is 4 or 5 times more expensive than it was just a decade ago. It is absurd. So as an example, I'm here in New York, right? I won't be able to get a hot dog tomorrow for less than like $15. I cannot go out to eat in Denver, in Miami, in New York, in San Francisco, for a single person for less than $50. It should be like $10 for me to go get a meal. Like, it is asinine how expensive stuff is. They've already printed the crap out of our money. It is in hyperinflation. And people are very aware of it. Like, you got to work 3 jobs. Most people can't keep up with just normal daily expenses at this point. It is crazy. So they've already done that. They are at the very tail end of this deal. The only way that they can get out of it is to reset the system and have a hard backing of some kind, which I think they will peg gold to oil. And then XRP will be used as a tier 1 asset alongside those to be able to shore up currencies, to be able to back treasuries and stuff that they have. So, and there's not enough gold. There's absolutely not enough gold for them to not have gold at like a $50,000 gold. Lynette Zhang says 42,000. It would have to be crazy prices. So there's going to have to be other things that people use to back the currencies with. And again, I think that that's going to be oil, because Canada ain't got no gold, and XRP. And that makes it fair. Every country has at least some gold or some oil and some XRP. And that allows them to be able to back their currency and everybody to be able to compete on a level playing field with their GDP and production. So that's my retort to your question, is they have already done that, and it obviously hasn't worked, and this is the only option that's left. Otherwise, we go to Mad Max, which nobody wants that. GTD XRP says, "Howdy, bingo master of the legendary proportions." Appreciate you, man. He says, "Group 1 Gav here. Hope you are all well. Will self-managed super funds be available to participate in the yield product when launched? Any ETA? Cheers." I don't know what the regulations on a self-managed super fund are. They seem similar to an IRA or a 401k here in the US. They seem like a retirement account. They seem like a qualified account. And the stipulations here in the US, again, not familiar with Australia, is that you can't borrow against the principal. The way that we're structuring this yield product, you're borrowing against the principal. It's you're lending the representation of value to somebody else. So it's held in your account there at Anchorage and gets reflected on somebody else's balance sheet. And then they're able to trade that in overnight repo. So, and they underwrite the risk and the volatility. So it's never rehypothecated, and the assets stay right there in your institutional account. I don't think we're going to be able to do that with IRAs or 401ks that are holding crypto. We will absolutely be able to do it with insurance policies that hold crypto, which is something else I'm excited about. But for a self-managed super fund, you should be able to partake in our product with Arch Public. It's a proprietary algorithmic trading strategy to be able to compound your XRP and cash position inside of your qualified account. It's actively managed and traded by the algorithm. So it's to set it and forget it and know that it's going to produce for you. So you can talk to our team over there about subscribing to that. We're taking some final applications right now because we needed that product. That's a very competitive product for an IRA because like we charge AUM fees, right? I don't like people paying us. We want to be providing more value than we're taking always. And so that's why this yield product is a big piece. You're going to be making more than you pay us at whatever amount. If you're at 50,000 XRP or you're over $10 million, doesn't matter. You're going to be making money on this deal. Same thing on the IRA product. Worst case scenario on the IRA product, if it's back tested, was 6% in 1 year. Best case scenario, I think it was like 47% in 1 year that you got additional XRP and cash in your account. So I would talk to the advisors over there. Don't quote me on any of this stuff. Again, I know enough to be dangerous, but they're going to be able to give you all the tear sheets and the information on that product. And that's what I think would probably be a best fit for a self-managed super fund. We got AWAGS 16. They say the legend and the tea lady. What's up, my dude? We're both in Discord today. Yes, we were. What a day. Sander Lutz supports sources say Clarity Act has till the end of February to compromise. If they don't, it'll likely be booted to 2027. Thoughts? I agree. Like if they don't get this done here, midterms show up, and who knows what's going to happen. I think there's going to be two bills. I think they're going to move the DeFi piece of the Clarity Act out so that they can get it across the line because that's what's causing the most contention. That and the stablecoin piece. I think they can get through the stablecoin piece. But I think that they're just going to designate what is a tokenized security and commodity. And then the DeFi component, I think they'll chop and do another bill later this year. So we'll have three pieces of crypto legislation. We'll see if I'm right on that or not, but that makes the most sense to me. Cody Carbone, who's the head of Digital Chamber, came out today and said that they are going to get a deal done. I think that's how they're going to get the deal done, is they chop out the DeFi piece. But yeah, XRP's got that moat, baby, until they pass it. JD says, if my LLC is moved into my trust, will it be more difficult to move XRP to Anchorage? Also, will it be difficult to borrow against the XRP after appreciation? Depends on what type of trust you have. And no is the answer to your final question, or the other one. It's still easy. So we did a full webinar on this the other day. You can go check it out if you're part of the mastermind with Dan Plaskett. We talked about a revocable living trust and how that differs from an irrevocable living trust. The revocable living trust that's issued in your state is a pass-through entity. It does not have an EIN. You can be the grantor, the beneficiary, and the trustee on that trust. And you want the assignment of your LLC and the assets in it to the trust so that you skip probate. You get probate protection. You're not going to get creditor protection from a living revocable trust. If you have an irrevocable trust that we file in Wyoming, like a dynasty trust or something to that effect, now you got to get additional people to sign off on stuff. If you're lending stuff out of there, it can't be to pay off creditors. It has to be able to be used to buy other assets or live your lifestyle or other things with. You're going to have a trust protector that's going to be able to change the provisions in the trust, make sure it's somebody that you know, like, and trust, that's not going to screw you on stuff. And then also you're going to need a distribution trustee to be able to sign off. And that's what helps you with the creditor protection versus just a living trust where you are the trustee yourself. So you still want to maintain the corporate veil of the LLC and all that stuff. And that's what's going to provide you the creditor protection. Because the living revocable trust doesn't have an EIN, you're just going to use the EIN associated with the LLC for KYB over there in Anchorage. And the trustee or the trust is going to be the title on there. I'd highly recommend that almost everybody sets up a living trust for them and their spouse. You can do it together or separate. Just depends on how you want to structure your assets. I would go talk to an attorney about that stuff. We do a very basic one for $500. And if you use the code webinar trust, you can get $200 off the assignment if you have the LLC and the assets there into the trust. So it's like $800 total, which is going to be still way cheaper than any attorney out there is going to charge you in your state for a living revocable trust. Again, this is just a standardized one. It's not like a bunch of bells and whistles. If you want something more fancy, I would go to an attorney and pay the money for it. It's going to cost you somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. But if you want something that's like just basic things, and you can move your LLC equity and the assets into it to be able to mitigate probate, we have that for you for $800 all in. Again, if you use the code webinar trust at digitalfamilyoffice.io. And if you need the LLC, you can always, code's been the same for forever. We got a lot of people that watch this over and over again. But if you need the LLC, you got at least $50,000 to $80,000 in crypto, and you want to make sure that you can mitigate taxes, have anonymity, and creditor protection. We do everything end to end for you for $2,000 if you use the code 50OFF, 50 OFFDAG LLC. That's 50 OFFDAG LLC. All right, Rockin' HL. They say in the town hall this morning, you mentioned a birdie said one thing of your bingo checks might not happen till 2026 or early 27. Your take on that? That tells me they're looking at it. And if there's an opportunity to do it sooner, BlackRock might launch that ETF a little bit sooner than the end of 26 or early 27. But there needs to be enough liquidity in the asset. They're not going to, launch probably, I don't know, what's Ethereum's market cap? Let's take a look here. ETH market cap. On coin market cap, Ethereum's market cap is $281 billion. XRP is around 170 something. So maybe once it's over 250 billion, that's when large institutions like Fidelity, Vanguard, and BlackRock would be willing to, create those products and bring them to market. That's my anticipation. So if we get to those numbers sooner than later, I think that they will also get there sooner than later. Johnny Lakers, what's up, my dude? He says, hola. What's up, Jake? When you say when the reverse carry trade unwinds, would you agree it begins unwinding? It's been unwinding already, just not at scale. Yeah, I would agree with that. There's definitely people, you've seen it in the crypto market. People are already de-risking. People have de-risked from gold. People have de-risked from silver. And people are like, oh, why is it falling? People, there's paper contracts on these metals. Okay. I know you don't want to hear this. And I don't want to say it either. Like, I don't like talking about, things going back down. I want to tell everybody it's going up into the right into the moon. Okay. Blockchain Backer does a really good job of this. He's like, hey, look, like, I'm going to be the bad guy here. I'm going to tell you stuff that you don't want to hear, but I'm going to be right about it. Silver's headed back to $50. The faster it gets here, the faster it gets there, the faster it can go back to new all-time highs. Okay. I would prefer just jump in the deep end, get it over with, and then V-bottom out of there. It's looking like, we're precariously moving along a cliff here before another big move to the downside. Same thing with gold. I think gold's pulling all the way back to 2,200 before it can continue, up into the right. Maybe the pullbacks aren't that aggressive. Maybe I'm off by a little bit, but I normally don't say I told you so, but kind of feel like I can on that one. But anyway, to your point, the liquidity is about to get pulled out of the stock market. It's about to get pulled out of bonds. It's about to get pulled out of commodities. It's going to come from everywhere when this happens. And it will be at scale. Tens of trillions of dollars will be sucked out of markets almost overnight. It will be a liquidity crisis, a lockup, ICE 9 event, all of that stuff when this happens. And that's why they're going to need instant settlement on the back end to be able to kickstart this stuff and get out of the unrealized losses and start to spur the economy and reduce inflation. So, yeah, I would agree. It's already started, but it's about to get a lot worse. James, Mr. Robertson, he says, EO, whatever, who paid for crypto reserve executive order. How much do we have? Seizure of assets 2020 being exposed, financial reset underway, XRP, the foundation, the new system. God bless everyone. Yeah, God bless you, my man. There's lots of things that are definitely happening in the background right now. We got Christian, Washington. They say XRP relationship with the NASDAQ is similar to the historical relationship between NASDAQ and the S&P. We really haven't seen. There's been Bitcoin for sure. I would agree with Bitcoin because there's every time we've seen an expansion in risk on, which are the things you pointed out there. We've absolutely seen an expansion in Bitcoin with M2 money supply. XRP hasn't followed that. It should have seen an expansion in 20, and because the lawsuit got smacked down, it did see an expansion in 21, and then got smacked down again. And we haven't seen the expansion, like we have in the stock market over the last couple of years either. We've seen some, and it caught up some. But if you look at the S&P price, the XRP price versus the S&P, you'd be able to see it's down in comparison. I looked at XRP priced in gold earlier today, which was an interesting chart. This is the stuff I like to do. I like to look at assets priced in other assets, not in dollars. And that gives you a much clearer picture on like how things are actually working. So I don't agree with you that it's tightly correlated to the NASDAQ like that. I would say that Bitcoin is much more highly correlated. And there's a disparity right now that we've seen versus the long-term historical trend. Honest Aim, good to see you. This is Mr. Legacy. Hi to the Tea Lady. Respect for all that you've built and help us in the Beyond Broke Mastermind to take advantage with you. You stated long-term you wanted to be on boards to make a difference. How? Buy stocks and know people? That's a good question. So strategic investments. So I want to be on the board of the top 10 most progressive companies in the world about the time that I'm 40. So we got another 6 years for that. But if we accomplish what we're looking to here, managing close to $10 trillion at Digital Ascension Group, and successfully scaling this from literally nothing to that level in that period of time, I think at that point I'll have the wisdom and discernment to be able to provide a lot of value for people and the resources to make strategic investments. If you look at people like the Waltons, as an example, a lot of people don't like Walmart. I'm not here to debate if they treat their employees good or bad. Okay, that aside, they make strategic investments in companies that they can utilize in their ecosystem and their partners can utilize. And so they'll make an investment in a company. They then go to their company and the other companies and say, hey, we're going to use this software. And if you're not going to use it, you're no longer a vendor, or you're no longer a partner, or you're no longer a customer. Well, they're going to use that software, aren't they? Absolutely, because they want to continue to work with Walmart. So that company then goes from, small startup to scale very quickly. To your point, Warren Buffett bought out Berkshire Hathaway. And this is an interesting story. I don't know if you guys know this or not. The guy that owned Berkshire Hathaway before Warren gypped him like 25 cents. He sent him he said, hey, I'm going to sell you my stock. And the guy said, cool, we'll buy it. And he tried to, take him down 25 cents below what he was supposed to. And so Warren told him, screw you, and then went and bought enough stock to be able to change the board, take over the company. Being a raider like they were in the 80s, I've read books by Carl Icahn. King Icahn is the name of that book. Highly recommend that one for people if you're looking to understand like corporate raider and M&A type stuff. Jimmy Valley, if you guys don't know, actually knows a lot about this stuff, and him and I geek out on it when we talk. Anyway, all that being said, yeah, I think it's going to be more strategic play in specific, progressive tech companies that are early stage, Series A, Series B, that have some traction that we can provide additional value to, similar to like a VC, but in more of a family office capacity. Long-term mindset. We're not going to try to, strip out all the costs and maximize profits so that we can have the highest return in a 5-year period because we got to pay back our investors. We're okay if they operate in the red for a period of time and need some additional liquidity as long as they're gaining market share, similar to like Amazon. Amazon was not profitable for 12 years, but they're one of the largest conglomerates in the entire world at this point because they gained so much market share operating in the red for that full time. There's something to that, right? So, I study people that are significantly smarter than me that have been around doing this for decades, longer than I have, and I try to learn from them and use that, in our own business, and then also hopefully one day be able to help make really good decisions for other people sitting on the board, like you talked about. A lot of good super chats. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me over here on TikTok, X, YouTube, and Facebook. This person says they have a self-managed super fund with crypto already. What are the best strategies to minimize unrealized gains before a major price rise? Get it out of there. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what the government over there in Australia is going to do if they're going to implement unrealized capital gains on the self-managed super fund. They were threatening like 30%, earlier this year, early last year in like June, and then they didn't end up going through with it. But at some point they definitely could. I've seen other people liquidate their self-managed super fund, pay the fees and taxes, and then, you have the assets in your personal name or in an LLC or a trust outside of that. And if you move them into a trust in Australia, you want to do it sooner than later because, it's going to be taxed on the way in, but it's going to grow tax-free on the inside of it. And you would rather pay the less tax up front versus later. And again, you should work with attorneys there in Australia. That's not my game. We're talking with an Australian family office, multifamily office here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. Gen X has posted, structure is key in the long run. Again, here's the code for the LLC. If you guys want to work with us on that, again, don't have to work with us. I try to explain everything end to end on here. I have lots of videos on it. If you want to, go watch those and try to do it yourself or work with another attorney, I'm very confident that we're going to be the cheapest option out there that does it right. We set up a holding company to be able to manage your digital assets in Wyoming. We have a lot of provisions in the operating agreement specific to this stuff that most attorneys aren't going to understand. They're also probably going to set you up a trading corporation, which is not a holding company. You're not going to be able to take advantage of long-term capital gains. We structure it with an NAICS code of 551112 or 551114. When you talk to a bank, we're going to give you a banking memorandum. We're going to give you a certificate of good standing. We're going to give you a registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, the template for the operating agreement, and ongoing maintenance to make sure that you're maintaining your corporate veil and segregating, personal assets from the LLC's assets. So if somebody does sue you, worst case scenario is all they can do is put a charging order against your LLC. So again, if you want to work with the best, we've done over 7,000 of these LLCs over the past 3 years. Again, biased here, but here's the code 50 off 50OFF DAG LLC. Get you everything that I just mentioned and more. We'll continue to add to the benefits here in latter half of Q1. All right, we got Oilfield broke. They say, hello, Jake. With all the recent events, is it possible for 3-digit XRP by the end of Q1? You're not giving a timeline. Only answer Beyond Broke members. Again, my attorneys told me do not give timelines. I have to stick to events. Waiting for oil, waiting for BlackRock ETF, we got the Epstein files, which was the other thing I said was on the bingo card at the end of 2025. So I feel like maybe those other things could follow quickly here, but until they do, it's going to continue to be how it is. We got Hamput Tong. Butchered that. I'm sorry. They say, hey, Jake, Beyond Broke Mastermind, DWP LLC, awesome. Onboarded with Anchorage, income fund participant. Glad to be working with you, dude. Thank you for all the support and the trust to be able to work with us. Thanks for all that you do for us. I have never got an income fund statement from my advisor when our distribution's made. So I talked with the team today. They're going to do the webinar this week. So I don't know when you invested in the fund. If it was within the last quarter, this one's taken a little bit longer because they went through a full audit of the hedge fund. They also had to do month end, quarter end, and year end close. And Securitize has to do that for all of the funds that they administer, which is a lot. So they are going to have the webinar here this week. Tony will be on there. He's going to explain everything. And the tactical income fund, I believe, did end up on the quarter. It's an off-cycle quarter for the tactical income. Oh, shit. I can't talk about that. Sorry. Some of the products over there are different than the publicly facing products that we have. And you need to talk with your advisor about, whichever fund you're in and the stuff. Again, it should be this week that you'll have that. I'm just as bad as everybody else on some of this stuff. I try to be good, but I have to defer to the advisor probably on the product that you're involved in. John Zag 28 says hour 22. Okay. Serious question. No strudel, no cheesecake, no strudel, no cheesecake. What's with the conflicting reports out of Iran? Some saying working a deal, Iran saying they're not. I don't think they are. I think they're absolutely going to escalate the conflict, and I think that they're going to shut down the strait. Papa Smiley says, I'm in social level now. How would someone like me work with you after price appreciation with only having a small bag and not enough money for an LLC? We are working on solutions to be able to democratize access to all the stuff that we're building. Believe me, like I started this for the little guy. Okay. And there's a progression of things, right? Like it's not like if you look at Tesla started with the Roadster. Okay. It was the most expensive model that they made. And then, they got market share with that. They got a lot of revenue. They got a lot of money. And then now they're able to democratize things down to the Robovan, and the Robotaxi. Okay. Which are like $30,000 a piece, $40,000 a piece. That makes it generally affordable for most people to be able to finance that type of stuff. Same thing with what we're doing. We started with the family offices. That is our core business. And then we have, the RIA where we've already, democratized access to this. Again, like other family offices, there's only one other family office in the US at this point. The other one's disbanded. There used to be 3. There's only 2 now. You need 20 million to even approach the other one. Same thing for the Bitcoin product that we just launched. You used to have $10 million worth of Bitcoin to be able to get access to it. You only need $500,000 worth of Bitcoin now. And we'll continue to break this down, right? Like we want people to be able to participate. We want to help the little guy. Like I didn't have a leg up. I've had to figure all this stuff out on my own. We want to create solutions where we are able to democratize access to stuff. And that is the long-term game. And you're going to be wealthy. Like if you own any XRP, you're probably going to do pretty well. So, just hold in there. It's going to take a little bit longer for people that don't have, the means to be able to acquire as much as some other people. And we haven't forgot about you. Like we are absolutely working toward a solution for everybody over the long term. All right. We got Bruce Lee's brother. He says he also has a self-managed super fund with crypto already in it. We already went over this one. I'm going to go to the bottom and work my way back up. I am way up in the chat. I'm not going to get to all the super chats tonight. If I miss you, please reach out and share it with us, and we will get it on the next live here. We got Keith about. They say, thought creating one's own 501c3 for charitable giving and mitigating taxes on profits for XRP. How much does your company charge to create a 501c? Depends on what type of 501c it is. Is it a donor advised fund? Is it a charitable remainder trust? Is it a private foundation? Is it a public charity? Most of the time, if it's a private foundation, you're going to be budgeting low end 75 grand, high end couple $100,000. And it's going to take you 6 months to get that done. And if you work with anybody that's charging any less or doing it faster, I would be concerned about it. Do your research though. Go talk to other attorneys and other people. If you want to reach out to Dan Plaskett, he's on our team. He can quote you on. So there are actually like 80 different types of nonprofits. 501c is the designation for that, but there's like 501c8, which is an association, which sororities and fraternities and brotherhoods and membership associations all use. There's lots of different structures for charitable giving. So it depends on what you want to do. 501c3 is what most people refer to when they're thinking about that stuff. But again, you might use a donor advised fund, charitable remainder trust. We can fund charitable remainder trust in kind with your crypto. You do not have to liquidate it. There are specific provisions and things that have to be done. But again, Dan Plaskett is the man with the plan on that. We have a whole podcast on charitable giving. If you want to go listen to that on the channel. And again, you can just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and reach out there, or you can email info@digitalfamilyoffice.io if you have philanthropic questions, and then we'll pass you along to Dan for him to be able to answer those for you. We've got this person here. I'm going to butcher their name. I'm sorry. I appreciate the super chat. He says, hey, Jake, hope you're well, bro. You got any news on BlackRock, XRP ETF, anything you heard at all from your circle? Also, how you feel about oil price. It's just not moving at all, and the Clarity Act not done as well. Sad face. Look, man, all of it's still right here. It's not gone anywhere. We're just waiting on whatever they're waiting on to be able to kick this thing off. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot longer. Again, I think there's going to be some good juicy stuff come out of the Ondo Summit tomorrow. Danger Pig says, legend. What's up, my dude? You mentioned XRP is the settlement mechanism for Project Ion, but I haven't seen evidence of that. Just speculation. How do you know it's XRP? Because we worked with R3. I can't talk about what we worked with R3 on, but I can talk about we worked with R3, and I have an NDA with them. That does not cover that piece, though. So you don't look. Don't have to believe me. If you want to read it online or wait till you can read it online, you're probably going to miss out on the opportunity. So again, not financial advice. If you want to do your own research and come to your own conclusions, I would rather go talk to people and work with people. That's why I'm here at the Ondo Summit tomorrow. I am in the room with the people that actually know what's going on, and I can ask them questions. We can talk about business, and what products we're creating and what they're doing and how all that works together in the same ecosystem. That's how I get my information. I go get it from the horse's mouth. Other people like to read stuff online and speculate. I don't prefer to do it that way. I would rather know. So again, just a guy on the internet. Don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. Take me, like I would listen to 40 or 50 people, and then come to your own conclusions on stuff. That's what I do. I listen to like 40 or 50 people across multiple verticals, that specialize in a specific demographic, or not demographic, but different verticals. And then, based on all of their theses, I put my thesis together. That's the way I would recommend doing it. If I'm one of those people for you, awesome. If you think I'm crazy and you think this is stupid, also awesome. It's probably a good time for me to remind, I don't ever say this. If you would like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're getting value here, it does help the algorithm, helps the channel grow, and helps it get out to other people. And if you could share it, if you think, somebody else would enjoy watching this, it does help things, and I appreciate it. And I haven't talked about the mastermind very much tonight. It's been going across the banner up here at the top. But if you do want to work with us, well, I mean, you don't have to work with us. If you like this and you want more of it, we have a lot more of it in the mastermind. We've got over probably 1,000 hours worth of content recorded there. We got tons of channels, tons of good people, over 16,000 people there in the mastermind that all are interested in, self-improvement, financial education, business resources, becoming healthier, all those things we talk about in there. Social membership is gone. We are no longer taking any new social members. Everybody that's in there is locked in. But we do have Carbon 1 available, Carbon 2 and Carbon 3. Carbon 3 I don't think is on the website, but that is in there in the mastermind. There's some qualifications to be in Carbon 3. But if you want to join the mastermind, you can use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for a discount there at Carbon 1. And all you have to do is go to beyondbroke.com. Peter, he says, who do you have near Wisconsin that I can onboard with? Prefer doing it in person? What are your thoughts on unstoppable domains? I have some unstoppable domains. I don't know if they're ever going to be used or not. We'll have to see. I think it's cool. Like actually, I've sent payments to my unstoppable domain and attached wallets to that. I think that part of it's cool. Wisconsin. We have people up in Pittsburgh and in the Northeast. Just reach out. Just go over to digitalwealthpartners.net in the contact us page and let them know that you prefer to do it in person. And I'm sure they can find somebody that's in close enough proximity for you. We'd love to work with you. Looking forward to it. I'm going to hang out for another 5 or 10 minutes here, and then I'm going to try to find me some food before everything shuts down here in New York. Let's see here. Guide right. That makes me happy to hear. Happy belated birthday. Love you guys. Happy belated birthday to my wife. She's older than me. I won't say how old. We enjoyed the weekend. She had a good birthday. At least that's what she told me. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what she told me. KT Baby, again, they say BG123 does 2 picks a year. Last was almost their next half to be around July. 2 balls in the present in the last pick with 2 ball drops. Do you think we're waiting for July for price appreciation? I don't personally, but it would be interesting to see. Lori says, hey, Jake, I'm headed down to Denver in a few weeks for ETH Denver. Hope to meet you there. All in on XRP, Carbon 1, and DWP. Awesome, Lori. I'm excited to see you. We are absolutely going to be there at the XRP meetup. Ray Fuentes is hosting that. If you guys want to go check it out, he's got his Luma up over there. It's going to be an awesome XRP meetup. We're sponsoring along with other cool people there at ETH Denver. We're going to have all of our advisors fly into ETH Denver. So all 27 of our advisors will be there in ETH Denver. So if you want to meet with our team, if you want to, meet advisors face to face and pick the one that you want to work with, that's going to be a great environment to do it in. And again, all you got to do, we can onboard just a regular Joe. You do not have to have an LLC. We recommend that you set up an LLC or a trust. But if you don't have the money for that right now and you do want to onboard the Digital Wealth Partners, you can absolutely do that. Just go to digitalwealthpartners.net and use the code. Sorry, there is no code. Haha. Fill out the contact us form. You might qualify for a free consult, depending on the way that you answer the questions. And if you pay the $1,000 to onboard, doesn't matter if you're an individual, we can get your account set up there for you. Jam Faction says, legend. What's up, my dude? Shout out to Colorado fam and the Beyond Broke Mastermind. So if the rest of the dominoes don't fall, can XRP still hit 3 digits in 5 years? Or is retail stuck here? If not, how can you get there in 5 years? Appreciate you. If what I don't say plays out, it's not going to happen. It's never going to be 3 digits. It is a whisper in the wind if we don't get all these things to play out. They're going to play out though. Like I know people have doubts and all this stuff. I have zero doubt that all of these events that I've talked about are exactly how this is going to play out. Crypto One Ron says, "Are you surprised at all the BTC didn't go lower at the Epstein files showing how much it was connected? XRP got a full mill for all of Europe. Wait till Satoshi moves his Bitcoin. When Satoshi moves his Bitcoin, that's when it's going to hit the fan." Oh, this person said, "Horny for Hormuz, not Hormozy." I'm sorry, Rocket 99. I don't even know who that is. Cracking me up, man. By the way, I'm the guy who gave you the knife, homie. Dude, I still carry the knife with me. I got it here in New York. I don't know what that's made of, but it gets through airport security. So pretty cool. Appreciate you. XRP Millionaire says, "When do you think XRP will decouple from Bitcoin?" When oil spikes, when the BlackRock ETF gets filed, when Tether implodes, when all of the dominoes that I've been talking about play out. That's when it's going to happen. Till then, just keep riding alongside Bitcoin. B Southern says, "Not asking for price prediction, but you said XLM HBAR max is 1,000. What is XRP's actual max price it could reach? $1 million. And that's in the code. Like it would be, there's a million drops and you go down to a tenth of a drop. So you could go down to a tenth of a cent at $1 million. I think $1 million XRP is the most it'll be ever. Well, I mean, I guess you could be worth, almost $10 million per XRP. But that's a long time in the future. That's like 50, 60, 100 years from now when, again, AI agents and, humanoid robots, and we have multiple economies and we're on multiple planets and there's multiple metaverses and all this other crazy stuff that sounds like a sci-fi film exists. All of that, and again, when I talked about this last week, but like with the advancements in AI and humanoid robots, GDP becomes uncapped. And that's what allows, again, eventually there'll be an AI economy that's completely separate of anything to do with humans, which will be nutty. You got Molt Book. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but the AIs made their own social media platform, and one of them sued their creator the other day, which is wild. A Call to Greatness, cool name. They say typically oil would have been affected more by now. What's your opinion? Is the straw that breaks the camel's back to kick off the reverse carry trade when they shut the Strait of Hormuz down? Like, I'm extremely confident that's going to be the deal. And again, that's not me. That's Jim Rickards that said that. And then this will be the last one that I take tonight. We got Abel MU 574. They say, "Jake, big fan. I started investing in Bitcoin since COVID and portfolio in the loss and never filed taxes. I heard XRP in 2024 went all in. Question is, how can I file a tax? And I did have to create LLC 4-digit XRP portfolio. If you need back taxes filed, I would just take them to your CPA. I would go through Coinly. I would aggregate all your transactions that you did in your personal name. Any gains or losses, you'll be able to roll forward as long as you're going to be able to pay the losses, you'll be able to roll forward. Gains, you're going to have to pay the taxes on. I would just get it caught up, man. It's not like it's, the end of the world. I know it can sound scary and feel scary if you're behind on stuff. But as long as you're moving forward in good faith and being proactive and sending in a check and doing something, they're gonna work with you. Now, if you don't do anything, they will come find you. They will audit you. They will garnish your wages. And if you don't have enough money to pay them, you could go to jail. So I would just be proactive. Go talk to a CPA. And again, I think the IRS is a scam, just like everybody else here. Okay. I just don't want to go to jail. and they give you the full tax code to be able to offset this stuff. So just use it, right? Like, don't try to go set up these crazy trusts or do stuff outside the system, or like, don't play with fire. I just work with good professionals, pay them what they're worth, and make sure that you're, not going to be in a bad situation. So that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday night to come hang out with me. If you want to be part of the mastermind, beyondbroke.com, you can use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a discount to start your time there at Carbon 1 or Carbon 2. If you want to work with us on the LLC, all you got to do is go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. We do the LLC, we do taxes, we'll do the living trust for you. The living trust code is webinar trust, all capitalized. The code for the LLC is 50OFF50OFFDAG get you everything end to end for $2,000. And if you want to work with us at Digital Wealth Partners, you don't have to have the LLC anymore, even though we do recommend it. We will work with individuals. You just go to digitalwealthpartners.net. Go fill out the contact us form. Again, you might qualify for a free consult. And if you do, you'll talk with one of our advisors, and you can onboard $1,000 to get you in over there at Anchorage, set up your institutional custody account, and hopefully get access to the yield product in the near future. So again, appreciate y'all. Look forward to seeing you guys in the mastermind, and we will report back on Wednesday, because we do these every Monday and Wednesday night with the AMA here. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.